Me now is Congressman Mo Brooks, Republican of Alabama. Congressman, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Al. It's an honor.
Now, you've signed a letter saying you'll oppose any spending bill that contains funding for Obamacare. So how do you respond to your own colleagues who says these tactics amount to governmental terrorism? Why do this?
Well, forgive me if my memory fails me, but if you're talking about the letter that was circulated by the Heritage Foundation /Action group and some congressmen, I did not sign that letter. If there's another letter out there, I'm unfamiliar with it just right offhand. All
right, well, what is your position on funding the government, including Obamacare?
Well, the House of Representatives has funded 99% of the federal government. I would like to see us go ahead and get out of the way the things that we agree on, 99% of the federal government, and then the other 1%, well, let's have a discussion about that. I don't see any reason to hold up the 99% in order to coerce out of the House of Representatives spending that we don't have the money for on a program that the American people don't want. But if we want to have a debate about that 1%, let's isolate it to that 1% and not hold up the other 99% of the funding for the federal government that apparently both the House and the Senate agree on.
No, but aren't you really reversing it? Aren't we seeing the Senate and others saying we're going to fund 100%? We've already debated the 1%, which is the Affordable Health Care Act, known as Obamacare. It's passed the House, passed the Senate 4 years ago. We had a general election where the candidate from your party lost running against it, and some went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled it's constitutional. So why are we going to hold up something that has already been voted and decided and has been law for 4 years?
Well, with the position that you're in, the background that you've been in as a civil rights leader for years and years and years, I'm sure you would agree that sometimes the Supreme Court makes a mistake. Certainly the early decisions that stood for separate but equal were bad decisions.
Right.
And fortunately, we had the Board of Education case out of Arkansas that turned that around. And I think you'd also agree that it was good of Martin Luther King to persist in fighting, even though for years and years and years and elections and elections and elections, the civil rights side had lost those fights. So it was good for Martin Luther King to persist in the face of having lost in the past. I believe, and the people who elected me are in accord with this, that socialized medicine is a bad thing that is going to do two bad things to our country. One, it's going to decrease the quality of health care, and two, it's going to increase our deficit and debt that's going to increase the risk of a debilitating insolvency and bankruptcy. Well, so I'm representing the people in my district in that regard, and I would expect those who have differing views to do the same thing. That's what Congress is all about.
And that is what it's all about. And I think you're absolutely right talking civil rights history and Dr. King history. But where you're wrong is Dr. King and no one else in civil rights ever took hostage government workers, veterans, paychecks. Just a minute, I listen to you. To equate those that would stand up and fight for civil rights, who would submit to going to jail and who would submit to things happening to them to raise their point. You're not sacrificing yourself. You'll get your check, and your colleagues will get their check. You're sacrificing others. That is not civil rights. That's not even civil, Congressman.
Well, who is holding whom hostage when the House of Representatives is more than willing to fund 99% of the federal government? We're willing to do that.
Yeah, what you're holding hostage is that we will not fund it if you're going to pay for what we disagree with. So it's like someone going in someone's home and saying, look, if you do what I say, everything is fine. But if you don't do what I say, then you are responsible for what happens. You have no business in my house. You have no business stopping something that is law, Congressman.
We're more than happy to set the 99% free. We have done that. We have voted that way. We've also passed appropriation bills in the House of Representatives, sent them over to the Senate for national defense, for military construction, for Veterans Affairs, for Homeland Security, for energy and water and some other items, yet the Senate has steadfastly refused to vote on any appropriation bills. All they have to do in the United States Senate is pass appropriation bills, and each time they do so and the House concurs in it, then you've freed up that part of the federal federal government from any risk of a federal government shutdown. So who's holding the hostages when we're trying to set the 99% free, but the Senate demands that we spend money on a program, money that we don't have, that we're going to have to borrow to come up with, and a program that the people of the United States, poll after poll after poll, have said they don't want?
The people of the United States went to the polls last year, Congressman, where a clear issue was Obamacare or this Affordable Care Act, and your candidate lost. The United States Congress and Senate voted it law. The Supreme Court upheld it. You can fight at the polls in the midterm elections to change that. You can fight and try to get enough Senate seats to change it. But to hold up government workers, to furlough government workers, to have veterans get their checks late, military men, to hold people that hurt while you get paid is a profile in courage, and it is not the way we should. We've never done this in the history of this country.
Well, actually, to the contrary, historically, you don't spend money unless the House, the Senate, and the White House all concur. And with respect to the elections, the American people also elected a significant majority in the House of Representatives, each and every one of whom campaigned on socialized medicine being a bad thing, each and every one of whom campaigned on the need to minimize the risk of a federal government insolvency and bankruptcy from our continuing to create giveaway programs that we don't have the money to pay for.
But you're
we don't want to be a Greece with a 27%
Congressman, where in the history of this country have we ever seen the House of Representatives hold up a budget or hold up funds to overturn a law? Name me when that's ever happened in the history of this country.
Actually, the continuing resolution that the House has passed does not repeal Obamacare. Now, let's also be clear. I think what ultimately is going to happen here is tomorrow, I'm cautiously optimistic that tomorrow the House of Representatives will pass a continuing resolution that will just delay the implementation of Obamacare for 1 year, much like the President has already done for big corporations, as he likes to call them. I call them job creators, and much as he has already done for over 1,000 other political allies and entities and friends of the White House. If it's good enough for these individuals, let's do it for all of America.
How do you delay something that you already lost? Well,